Welcome to another episode of Bad Takes in Football. This is your host, Bad Takes. I'm excited to get into the Hall of Fame game that happened last night, but before I do, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. Would love to hear what your thoughts are on the game. Without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, start out with a lot of excitement. First play of the game on the kickoff was a fumble. Number 15, Grant Stewart, a defensive player, returned the ball for the Lions, ended up running into his own player and getting the ball punched out. Really, that was the tale of the entire game, I would say, for the Lions. Trey Lance was the starting quarterback for the Chargers. Was excited to see him out there. Hadn't really had a lot of opportunities to see him play, so was curious to see how he did. And I would say he didn't disappoint, right? Even on that first drive, he had a 5 yard completion for a touchdown to Will Dissly on like a 4th and 2. We got to see a little bit of Omarion Hampton out there. I wouldn't say did anything crazy, but I saw a solid like 8 yard run out of him. Another important factor to talk about was Zion Johnson, started at center for the Chargers, and on the first drive, he had a couple of mishaps, but didn't necessarily deter them as a team, and they were still able to score. From the Lions' perspective, they had Kyle Allen as their starting quarterback, and I would say his performance was lacking in the sense that if I'm the Detroit Lions, I'm looking what Kyle Allen did. I believe he had 2 interceptions in the first half. One was to Nico Reed, who is a hopeful for the Chargers. They're very excited for him out of Oregon. But also, Kyle Allen really just kind of, he didn't produce anything from an offensive perspective. I would say from the Lions' perspective, the most productive player was probably Craig Reynolds. Craig Reynolds had, I think, a solid first half. I wouldn't say it was anything special. I know he ended with a touchdown to end the first half, I should say. But for me, really, the story of the game was Trey Lance. He connected with Keandre Lambert-Smith for a touchdown really late in the first half. That was after that Dissly touchdown. And really, the entire first half, he had, I think it was a pretty commanding lead. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it was 21-7 going into half. And then really from there, it came down to back and forth performance in the second half. I think the Chargers put up, another 13 points. It was mostly field goals. They did have another touchdown. Some interesting things that I wanted to make sure to mention based off of what we kind of talked about. So, from a rookie perspective, players that I felt like, really kind of stood out to me. 7th rounder Levette was targeted early and often, I would say, for the Lions. He started out with an initial drop, but then really came back and got comfortable. And I think he had like 3 consecutive receptions after that for first downs. So I was really impressed to see how he performed, even with, I would say, a tough catch on like a 4th down to keep the chains rolling, which ended up leading to the Lions' lone touchdown in that game, which was scored again by Craig Reynolds. Other than that, I mean, for me, the Lions had another fumble on a punt return that left the Chargers in early field range, like really short field goal range. I think they were on the 5 yard line. Hendon Hooker was the quarterback at the time for he was the quarterback for the Lions at this time, and he wasn't necessarily getting the ball rolling. Like I said, they had to punt, and the Chargers were able to recover that muffed punt, and then from there be able to kick a field goal with Dicker. Dicker did go, I believe, 2 for 3 from a field goal perspective. He did miss one field goal early on in the first half, but was able to bounce back from there. Some other notable, I would say, plays that happened. Tony Jefferson, veteran, he intercepted Kyle Allen in the end zone for Kyle Allen's second interception. It's interesting. We're talking about rookies and second-year players a fair amount in preseason, but, Tony Jefferson is a veteran that is still looking for a role on a team. And, I know that the Harbaugh family holds Tony Jefferson near to their heart. He was a Raven for a very long time, and, People were even hoping he would come back as a coach, I believe, but he still has the itch to be a player. So, good for him, and happy to see that he got an interception out there. But other than that, I would say Tesla, the wide receiver out of Arkansas, right? He is, I believe, a fifth round pick. He was impressive. I think he had I would say three consecutive catches over 15 yards. He had one play after the next. I believe one was 25 and the other was near 20. So he was really keeping the ball rolling as well for the Lions. Just wasn't enough, but always still nice to see a player like him performing out there for them. DeAndre Lambert Smith out of Auburn. He was performing at a very high level. I was really excited to see how he played. Lastly, what I would say is just it was probably one of the cleaner Hall of Fame games I've ever seen. Right? I think that's also an important factor to mention. I talked about how the Lions had a new offensive and defensive coordinator. I think you saw some of that in this game, right? They weren't necessarily productive on either side of the ball, but there wasn't a lot of pre-snap penalties. There wasn't a lot of post-snap penalties. They were really just able to play. So for me, I was impressed with how this game went. Excited to hear what you think about this game. Obviously, we have a week off before next preseason games. Let me know what you think. Drop a like, drop a comment. I hope you have a good rest of your day. This is Bad Takes with Bad Takes in Football, signing out.